Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for your patience. A lot of you are on here early. It's a very punctual crowd. Thank you so much for joining us this lovely Sunday afternoon for a follow-up on what was a really, really exciting conversation last night at the Richmond Forum with Andrew Yang and Congressman Justin Amash and Senator Joe Manchin, and moderator Mara Eliason, digging into the two-party problem and how the partisan duopoly that run our elections really is a detriment to so much progress in our politics. Um, and what I really appreciated in that conversation was that they didn't just focus on the problem, they really focused on solutions as well. And my heart was even more overjoyed that one of the solutions that got a lot of airtime was ranked choice voting. And that is most of what UpVote Virginia works on. So I'm Liz White. I am the executive director of UpVote Virginia. UpVote is a nonpartisan nonprofit organization that really focuses on strengthening democracy by looking at structural elements and looking at the systems themselves and what we can do to strengthen them, to innovate them, to try new things to make sure that voters are being accurately represented at all levels of government and that elected officials are responsive and held accountable to voters. So, we have a really great program for you tonight. I'm really, really grateful for all of our panelists and who are giving their time. I'm really thankful to all of you all who are here. If you have questions, please use the Q&A box. I'm going to do my best to look at the chat and the Q&A box, but you have a lot of expertise on this panel. So any kind of question you have will hopefully get answered in that Q&A box if I don't get to it in my part of the presentation or if another panelist doesn't cover it. But we are going to talk about what ranked choice voting is and how it works, why we think it's worth our time to advocate for. We're going to talk about Tamaya Dennard from Represent Women, which is a spectacular national organization, is going to talk about what ranked choice voting and innovations like it can do to increase representation across gender and racial lines and make sure that all voters are being taken care of in our systems. And then we're going to hear from some local Richmond VIPs, Councilwoman Katherine Jordan, Dr. Matthew Slaats with the RVA People's Budget, and joining us later will be Jerome Legions, who is the current president of the Richmond City Democratic Committee and the former president of the Richmond Crusade for Voters, to really ground the conversation in Richmond specifically. So let's get going. I am going to share my screen. And again, if you've got questions, throw them right in that Q&A box, and we'll try to make sure we get to everything in an efficient way so we use this hour for every second that it's worth. Okay. So here we go. We're going to share the screen. Flag me down if you can't see it, but I think it seems to be working okay. All right. Ranked choice voting in Virginia. A couple things. When I do this in person, I really like to start by asking the room who feels like they can explain ranked choice voting to someone they know. And I get some tentative hands. It's usually a pretty mixed bag, and that's just the way I like it. This is really intended to be a ranked choice voting 101 and an introductory survey course, right? So that by the end of this, hopefully everyone will feel that they can explain this to friends. The other caveat I'm going to give right here at the beginning is because we have a limited amount of time, I am going to be talking about the kind of ranked choice voting that would be used in a single winner election, which is most of our elections in Virginia. But we're talking about electing one city council person, a mayor, a delegate, a congressperson, etc. You'll have to come back. We'll have to do a follow-up one and spend more time talking about how ranked choice voting can lead to proportional representation when you're talking about electing an at-large city council or something like that, multiple people at a time. So here we go. Ranked choice voting is a simple change to the way we cast our votes and make our preferences known that lead to better voter experience, better campaigns, and ultimately better government. For you as the voter, all it means is that instead of getting your ballot and picking one candidate that you like, instead you get to indicate your favorite, and then you get to rank some backup choices. So obviously, if we're only electing one person, the best you can ask for mathematically, if you're picking one person to represent an entire electorate, is that they at least have the support of 50% of voters. If they can cross that 50% line, again, that's like the best mathematical floor we're able to put in place. And that doesn't currently exist. If you have a crowded field, if you have what we see in Virginia, usually at the local level or in party primaries, where you see 5 people, 6 people, 12 people running for the same office or the same nomination, all of a sudden we're electing folks with 22%, 26%, 35%. It's not a great way to run an election. It doesn't really make for an electorate that feels like they've been heard. So, how are we going to get to this point where we can identify someone who's got that majority support? So glad you asked. Voters have the option to rank their first choice, second choice, third choice, as many as are available on their ballot. And we can get into what determines that number. We're going to count everybody's first choice votes. If somebody has more than 50% of first choice votes, no matter how many people are in the race, great, then we're done. We didn't need to go to the second round. Everybody gets to go home early, all set. But when you have these crowded fields of candidates, that becomes increasingly unlikely. So what we're going to do, if that is not the case, is we're going to take the candidate who has the fewest first choice votes. They are eliminated. If that was your first choice, if you're one of those voters that cast your first choice vote for that eliminated candidate, now your vote's going to count for your second choice. And we do what's called an instant runoff vote. And we keep going with that process until someone cracks that 50% threshold. So I'm going to go through that again quickly with pictures, because I think that hearing it a few different ways is really what leads to those light bulb aha moments. So this is going to be slightly oversimplified because, this is just rectangles telling a story. But if you imagine that this is a graph showing the election results of a party primary, and there are 4 candidates running, and turquoise has about 44% of the vote, I think most of us who are used to first past the post plurality elections would look at this and go, yeah, right, turquoise did pretty well. That's a lot more than 25%, 44% in a 4-person race. Okay, that's pretty good. But here's the problem. If this is the only information we have, which is in our current system, the only information we'd have, we know how 44% of voters feel about turquoise as a candidate. We have no idea how 56% of voters feel about turquoise. They might be fine with turquoise. Turquoise might be their second choice. It might be okay. Or they might hate turquoise. They might say, absolutely not. I do not feel at all represented by turquoise. We don't know. But with ranked choice voting, we can find out. So we're going to eliminate dark purple, and we're going to see where dark purple's voters want to place their vote with their second choice. So in this example, those votes were pretty evenly split between turquoise and lilac. Turquoise is really close to 50%, but not quite there. So we're going to eliminate orange. We're going to keep going. Again, in this example, now turquoise is well over the 50% mark. And that tells us a few things. One, that they've got more of a mandate to lead, that well over the majority of voters support their candidacy. Maybe not as their first choice, but they're okay with it. So that is someone they feel can represent them. 2, look how many colors it took to reach that majority threshold. Turquoise wasn't going to be able to get there without knocking doors in areas they don't usually go to, talking to voters they don't usually go to, addressing parts of the base, parts of the electorate that maybe they've never had to talk to or work with before. They are better prepared to lead, better prepared to represent people. They have built a coalition, and that's the kind of candidate, one, who's going to actually make progress and speak on behalf of their voters, 2, that are accountable to their voters, and 3, are going to really understand what's needed. Now, usually you might say turquoise was ahead anyway. the actual outcome here didn't change. Why are we bothering? That's usually true. In about 90% of elections, the person who is ahead on the first ballot ends up ultimately winning. But one, you get all of this other information, which is helpful to everybody. And two, it is a gatekeeping mechanism against polarizing divisive candidates. If turquoise had been the person who 56% of voters really hated, if they're that kind of person who's either your first choice or no choice at all, then they can't win in a ranked choice voting election. And that is good news, because those are not the kinds of people who are going to get things done for us. Why ranked choice voting now? I mentioned last night at the forum that we launched our organization in 2022, and we're certainly relatively new to the RCV party. But even though it's been around for a century, I've noticed a huge uptick just in the last couple of years over how often people hear about it and how much information people have. And I just think it's this twofold reason that one, we are just increasingly tribal. That was the theme of last night, is you have a duopoly in politics and there's polarization to the point that people are disincentivized, voters and elected officials, from meeting in the middle. The other part should just be good news. More and more people are stepping up to run for office. More different kinds of candidates are stepping up to run for office. And our system isn't built to navigate those crowded fields. So RCV just provides the math to help those elections yield more representative results. All right, I'm going to try to slam through these benefits pretty fast because I do not want to take up time from our panelists. So here we go. We kind of covered this. Ranked choice voting ensures majority winners, as opposed to electing folks with 25, 35%. Benefit two, RCV rewards candidates who build consensus. And that, again, we covered in the graph, but you can't be an effective RCV winner without having a message that appeals pretty broadly in your electorate. The other flip side of that coin is that ranked choice voting disincentivizes negative campaigning. If you're in a primary with someone in a ranked choice voting election and you just launch these horrible attacks and get personal and run the kinds of ads that we unfortunately are used to seeing around election season, what you're actually risking is that you alienate those voters entirely. And if that opponent is eliminated in the ultimate tabulation before you, you've wasted those votes. You could have gotten those votes if you had instead said, oh, Bob, candidate Bob, sure. We have a lot in common. I hope that if you're ranking him first, you'll rank me second. Because now if Bob is eliminated first, now I get those votes. So it's pretty hard to get candidates to stop negative campaigning out of the goodness of their hearts. It's a multi-bazillion-dollar industry. It must work. So we have to change the incentive structure. And that's what I mean by really changing the system itself. Some of these next points, I think Tamaya is going to get into more. So again, we're going to zip through them a bit. But ranked choice voting eliminates spoilers. And I mean that in two different ways. One is the spoiler effect you see in presidential cycle years. You know, you see a Jill Stein or a Ralph Nader or a Ross Perot, and maybe there's a third party candidate or an independent who gets just enough votes to skew the results one way or the other because neither major party candidate has actually crossed the 50% threshold. And then you get all the think pieces in the world about, well, where would Jill Stein's voters actually have gone? And does this person even have the right to be on a ballot? And is it responsible to vote third party? And ranked choice voting eliminates that. If you have a contribution to make, you can be in the race. You can be on the ballot without harming anybody else's chances. It is just about who votes for you, not whose votes you're taking. We also eliminate the uncertainty. We know where Jill Stein voters go with ranked choice voting. And I pick on Jill Stein just because she's a good example, I think, a clear example of this. But if you rank that third party, that underdog candidate is the one who is speaking to your heart, you can just vote for them. You don't have to worry that you're wasting it. You vote for that candidate, and then you still get to weigh in on the ultimate top two matchup. The other part of the spoiler effect that I mean is often you get two candidates who are similar in some way. Maybe they are of the same racial demographic. They're two women, they're two young people, they're two progressives, they're two people from the same neighborhood, whatever it is. And all of us voters, especially those of us spending time talking about ranked choice voting on a Sunday, we consume a lot of political analysis and we try to vote like pundits. And so we go, ooh, okay, well, those two candidates are going to split the fill in the blank vote. So they are probably not going to win. So I'm going to vote for this other person who has a better shot of winning. And we might be right. Two candidates who are similar in some way could currently damage each other's chances by being in the race together. And then you have party leadership and kind of the powers that be telling would-be candidates, not only do we already have someone for this job, but we already have someone like you. Ranked choice voting eliminates that need for gatekeeping, because if two candidates share a characteristic and that characteristic is what voters want, then they don't split the vote. Voters ultimately get someone who meets that criteria and they don't harm each other's chances by being there together. And then the other part, which again, I know Tamaya is going to touch on, I think benefit 3, the lack of negative campaigning, and benefit 4, the lack of gatekeeping, lead to more opportunities and lower barriers to entry for women and people of color. And ranked choice voting has been shown time and time again to be one of the structural changes that leads to more diverse representation. Okay, I'm trying to keep an eye on the clock, but I do want to show this map. I love this map. We borrowed this from Fair Vote, which is a national org that works on ranked choice voting. My favorite part about this map is how many colors are needed to show all the different ways ranked choice voting is used around the country. Ranked choice voting is not an ideology. Ranked choice voting is math. It gets painted with a pretty partisan brush sometimes because everything does, I think, these days. But it's just a solution to various different problems. So if you look at this one, all these light purple states are states where at least one locality, city, county, or town, uses ranked choice voting for local elections. You can see Virginia is one of those. Our two little dots are Arlington and Charlottesville, and I will cover the law in a minute that allows us to do that. But you can see the dark purple states are Alaska and Maine. They use ranked choice voting statewide for almost all elections. Hawaii is that yellowy color. They use ranked choice voting for special elections. And then one of my favorite parts are these like navy blue states, this southeastern corner, this deep south. They use ranked choice voting to solve a really specific problem. And Andrew Yang briefly mentioned on this. If you blinked, you would have missed it last night. But these are the states that have a majority requirement in their state constitution. If no one crosses the 50% threshold in an election, the top two candidates go into a runoff. Everybody has to come back in 4 weeks. It is expensive. The voter turnout plummets. And what do you do with your military and overseas voters? And that is the question that these 6 states have answered by using ranked choice voting. There's no time to get new ballots for the runoff out to military and overseas voters. So what they do is use ranked ballots. So if your first choice didn't make it to the runoff, okay, we just go to your second choice and you get to participate just as thoroughly as someone who is there in person on election day. So I love that. Ranked choice voting in Virginia, what we currently have is a local pilot program that passed in 2020. Delegate Sally Hudson was the patron of that. She is no longer in the legislature, but still works on ranked choice voting. That law allows cities and counties to adopt ranked choice voting for their city council elections or their county board of supervisors elections. It is set to expire in 2031. Arlington and Charlottesville are the 2 localities that have taken the state up on their offer. Arlington has used it now several times in county board elections, and Charlottesville has used it last year for the first time in their city council primaries. It allows for a lot of flexibility based on what the locality needs. What we would like to do, the bill that's in the legislature now that is passed in the Senate and passed in the House, so we're looking for a pretty smooth path to Governor Spanberger's desk, fingers crossed. It would add towns to the localities allowed to implement ranked choice voting for their local governing bodies. And it also will make the option permanent. So that sunset will go away and give us all a longer path to continue helping localities to adopt this where it's helpful. The other thing we would like to see, and there's no legislation currently pending, but hopefully in the near future, we think it would be really effective in Virginia to give the political parties the option to use ranked choice voting in their party primaries. Again, mostly to navigate these big fields and get rid of the negative campaigning, all of those benefits, just ultimately produce a candidate who's more representative of not only the primary voters, but also the overall electorate in the general election. What can you do? I'm going to be coming back to these slides at the end, and I'm going to be putting these links in the chat for you all as well. But you can sign our petition that will put your information in our system. We were a staff of 2 until Friday, and my coworker has been hired by the Spanberger administration. So I am currently a one-woman staff. I do not have time to spam you, I promise. So we are very responsible with your information, but that will send an email to your delegate and your senator, letting them know that you support ranked choice voting and encouraging them to do the same. You can volunteer. You can visit our Richmond page on our website. You can sign up to be part of our LAG, which is what we call our local action group. And you can be part of this growth. We need people to work at festivals, to do speaking engagements, to find speaking engagements, to really help us build and get the word out about ranked choice voting and its possibilities. So that QR code goes directly to the sign up page for the local action group. Again, I will come back to this. I will put all of this in the chat. And that is my email address and our website if you would like more information. And I managed to end a couple of minutes early ahead of my time. So I'm going to look at the Q&A box really quick. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see you all better. What if a polarizing candidate gets no second or third choice votes to put him or her above 50% because the rest of the voters don't want him or her no matter what? What happens? That somebody's going to get it to 50%. That's kind of how that gatekeeping I talked about works. If a polarizing candidate gets, 35% of the first choice votes, but no second or third choice votes, they're never gonna, their vote share doesn't go above 35%, but mathematically somebody's got to get those other percentages. So somebody will cross that 50% line, and it won't be someone who's that divisive. The graph was great. Good. And I will also be sharing these slides. I will put all of that in the chat and in a follow-up email as well. Do we have a similar presentation for Lisa Murkowski in Alaska? Andrew Yang said that RCV got her elected. I don't have visuals. I'm sure they're out there and I could find them. What Andrew Yang was talking about is Alaska does what they talked about last night in a nonpartisan primary. I think Senator Manchin went into this. The nonpartisan primaries where everybody runs for office in one primary, regardless of party or lack of party. Everybody's in one mix. In Alaska, voters show up, they pick their top 1 candidate, top 4 vote getters go into the general, and then they use ranked choice voting. So if it had just been a regular primary, like just a Republican Senate primary in Alaska, quite possibly Lisa Murkowski would have lost that nomination because only Republican voters would have been allowed to go vote. And often primary voters tend to be more polarized than the general election voters. So she could quite possibly have lost the Republican nomination, which would make it really hard to win a Senate race in the general, though she has done it before on a write-in campaign, which with a last name like Murkowski really is extraordinary. But because it was ranked choice voting, she got a lot of the Republican votes first choice, but then she got a lot of Democrats second choice votes. So she ended up being the candidate who best represented the general electorate in Alaska. I will go into, while other folks are talking, I'll go into the Q&A box and answer more of these. But I do want to pass the torch to Tamaya. and cover some more of this information. I really, really appreciate y'all's time. Feel free, this Q&A box will be open, and as I said, will put a bunch of links in the chat. But Tamaya, I'm going to hand it off to you. Tamaya Dennard is with Represent Women, which is one of my favorite national organizations. And I hope you'll tell us more about it. And she's going to delve into ways that structural changes like ranked choice voting really can benefit non-traditional candidates and the electorate overall.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It is very cool to be with you. I'm excited. I'm going to attempt to share my screen. Let's see here, you all. Give me 1 second. I was trying to, let me see here, advanced. No, share. I'm going to, okay. Sorry, let me try that again. And, okay, can you all see this okay in the screen?
It looks good. You got a lot of tabs open. I do not.
I know,
I
do
don't
not
envy your
judge me.
inbox.
I'm feeling, Liz, do not.
I feel you.
Don't judge me because it's rough out here. So it's super great to be with all of you. So I'm Tamaya Dennard, and I am the Programs and Partnerships Manager with Represent Women. And I'll just give you a little background about Represent Women. I don't have a whole lot of time, but I'll leave our website at the end so you can just learn more about us at your own pace and on your own time. But we are a national nonprofit, 501c3, and we work on gender parity, increasing opportunities for women and gender expansive people in elected office. So we do that from a systems reform perspective. So what data, what research have we seen that makes it easier for women to run, win, lead, and serve? And undoubtedly, ranked choice voting, based on our research, is one of those systems that, when it's used, more women are elected into office. So I felt bad about sharing this particular thing because you all have grown leaps and bounds since our last gender parity index. But one of the things that we produce every year is a gender parity index where we give each state a grade in accordance to how they're faring with gender parity. So Represent Women has only been around since 2018. We were founded by Cynthia Ritchie Terrell, but the gender parity index has actually been around since 2013. So it predates the actual organization. But I have some knowledge from our researcher, Courtney, who this is Virginia last year, pre your historic wins in the state assembly, pre your election of Governor Spanberger. So I have close information that you all will be closer to a B on our gender parity index. We release it every year around July or August. So this is last year's pre-election. So, but it's the latest that I have. But I just wanted you to see the gender parity index, and we produce this for each state. So I just wanted to give you a little substance of the work that we do at Represent Women. And this is the entire country, last year's index, which is the current index for 25. But just so you can see, and how we define gender parity is women are 50% of the population. So we should hold at least 50% of seats on the local, state, and federal level. So as a country, we are far behind where we need to be in terms of parity, but there's a few states who are doing well. And just, Virginia, this past election you had, not only electing a woman governor, but your state house, it was tremendous and inspiring for people around the country. Believe me, we were all watching. So, just to give you a little background too, so we also, as a research organization, we produce a document or a research deliverable about breaking barriers for Black women candidates. And what we noticed in terms of, the barriers that we research and we try to find policies for, the barriers for some women are different than barriers for others. So with Black women, there's misogynoir. If you're not familiar, it's the intersection of like misogyny and racism, and then just biases, flawed political practices. We'll talk about, but we actually have if you go to our website, we have a research document on breaking barriers for Black women and the systemic challenges and opportunities. And I'm bringing that up just to give you some background of the work that we do. It's all research, but ranked choice voting is definitely one of those things that we talk about relative to barriers for all women, but specifically women of color. So we've identified through our research that there are three main spaces that need the most work so that we can increase gender parity: political party recruitment, inequitable funding, and outdated voting systems. For the sake of time, we'll hone in on the outdated voting systems, and we'll talk a little about political party recruitment because those two are impacted by ranked choice voting. So just as a snapshot, I was, referencing, you all know the historical wins that you had in Virginia. So there are 140 seats in your assembly. Women now hold 56 of those seats. Mathematically, we know that's not quite at parity. So the way it should be, and where you would have parity in your assembly house, is if women had at least 70 of those seats. Now, really close, and I'm not thumbing my nose at progress. I'm just making sure you understand that's a big jump, but it's not quite where women need to be. In terms of those 56 seats that women hold, Black women, I'm sorry, I left out the word Black women. Black women hold 23 of those seats, and that's about 15 and 16% of those seats. But women also are about 20% of the population of Virginia. So still not quite representative. And again, I'm not thumbing my nose at progress. I'm just looking at the data. And why it's important to enact ranked choice voting on, the local level, in addition to the state and the federal level, is that, when women are running for office, it's oftentimes the path comes through city council, commission, town council. Those are the folks who are often getting tapped to run for higher office. So that's why it's really important. And I know in Richmond, you all have reached parity in terms of gender with your seats. And that's really good. And that's a great thing, but also it's important that we codify that. So it's not happenstance or, we're taking the chance that it's going to happen every time. It might not. So enacting something like ranked choice voting is really important into law so that you can solidify and codify the progress that you've made. And I just want to give you some perspective on the national level because it's really important. Women currently make up 5.4%. Black women make up 5.4% of Congress, 3.2% of statewide executives, and 5.2% of the state legislature. And this is specifically Black women. So one of the things that we talk about in terms of, and not just that we talk about, but our data backs up, is outdated voting systems, specifically plurality voting. And plurality is just the name that we use under the current system that we most use, where winner takes all. But this disadvantages Black women because they are stereotyped as being unelectable. I am a former elected. I was president of City Council in Cincinnati, but a lot of times Black women for biases, reasons, as you all know, are automatically discounted as not being electable. And that's really important because it's important that ranked choice voting is used because it allows you might say in your heart, well, I really like, this person. I think she's a dynamite candidate, but I don't think she can win. And so you don't vote what you think is best. You start voting more strategically instead of the candidate that you most resonate with. And so ranked choice voting allows you to rank the person that you really, really like first. And there might be someone else you might like strategically, but oftentimes Black women are eliminated before we can even get consideration because we're thinking about who's electable and who's not. And then also another mentality that people have, and it happens not just to Black women, but women in general, is the hospitality mentality where you've heard this, the wait your turn approach to, it's somebody else's turn, somebody else should be running. And if we're being honest with ourselves, if many of these candidates wait their turn, in all honesty, their turn will never come. So it's really important that we get away from that hospitality mentality, and ranked choice voting helps us to do that. Now, one thing's too with negative campaigning is a lot of times women candidates in general, and I know you've all seen this, where they put your picture in the paper and it's almost always an unflattering picture of a woman when she's running for office. They just do it intentionally. It is intentional. So it really helps with subsiding negative campaigning. And I know that's like, Liz talked a little bit about that earlier, but it's really important because oftentimes women are the ones who bear the brunt of the negative campaigning, and that takes its toll. As someone who's run for office, you're human. You're not sensitive, or you can say you're not, but at the end of the day, you're human, and that takes its toll. And also splitting the vote. Also, what happens with women is they'll have a dynamite. Say there's a black woman running for office, and she is super progressive or she's super conservative. She's whatever. She's who you want to be. And there's somebody, the party or the powers that be don't really like her, so they'll run somebody very similar, very similar politics to try to split the vote. That's something that happens a lot too, more than people will admit. And like I said, I not only have I run for office, I've been a campaign manager and operative, so I've seen it all in terms of what parties will do to split votes when someone's likely to win, and we fall victim to it because we're in a winner take all system. So it's really important that we are able to have candidates who are similar and be able to vote our preference. Now, in terms of looking at Portland, Oregon, and New York City as prime examples of how ranked choice voting increases representation. In New York City, they have a majority of women on their city council. And not only are there a majority of women, within that majority, there are young women, Black women, Asian women, Muslim women, Hispanic, Latina, queer women. So it's not just women, but it's diversity of the women that you get. Also in Portland, Oregon, they went from a 5-person council of all white men from an affluent part of town to now having a 12-member council with 25% of those council are women of color and almost 50% of the council are women. So, and that's because of ranked choice voting. So there are proven results of ranked choice voting. Also, I'll touch a little bit about party recruitment because ranked choice voting, honestly, a lot of times where it hits challenges is usually the party that's in power doesn't like it, whether it be Republican or Democrat, because they want to hold on to the status quo. They don't want anything to change. And so party recruitment sometimes is problematic for women candidates in general, but specifically Black women, because and I don't know, in Cincinnati where I live in Cincinnati, Ohio, the parties they choose the winners. And so that's not always correct. And I don't know how you feel politically, but if the party would have if the party would have had its way, Mondani would not have been the mayor of New York City because the party, the establishment clearly wanted one candidate and the people wanted another. And I don't think whenever there's an opportunity to raise the voice of the people, to me, in a democracy, regardless of where it falls, that's a beautiful thing. So RCV takes a little bit of the power from political parties where they don't get to pick the candidates. You, the people, get to pick the candidates. So these are just like I wanted to give like some overarching just themes. I didn't want to talk too long, but just in general, RCV, it's important to in terms of the broad reach of representation. It dismantles a lot of candidate level and systems level obstacles, whether it be on the political party side or the plurality voting side. I think it encourages investment and recruitment of Black women candidates earlier because everybody wants a winner. Everybody likes a winner. A lot of times, I think sometimes I think about Ayanna Presley when she first won. Everybody loves Congresswoman Presley now, but she was scratching and crawling to get party support. And once she got party support, now they act like they always loved her, but they did not. So and they have ranked choice, using, and she's a proponent of ranked choice voting, which I'm super proud of. But the point I'm making with that is like the party doesn't always know what's best because if they had their way, Ayanna Presley would not be a representative in Massachusetts. And that's all I have. Unless there's any questions, I'll hang around the whole hour to answer questions that you may have specifically about ranked choice voting as relates to representation. But if you want to see the Breaking Barriers for Black Women research brief, you can scan this QR code, or you can just go to Represent Women, and then under research, we have a lot of different reports and research relative to RCV. And I'll just tell you, just quite honestly, where RCV is present, women are 26% more likely to be elected to office. And where ranked choice voting is present, in those municipalities and places, women hold 52% of the seats. That's over parity where ranked choice voting is used on average. So that's ranked choice voting relative to women candidates and Black women candidates. And then this is our website in general. If you just want to, we have a ton of research, a big library for you to research. And I also drop my email in the chat so that you all, if you have just individual questions, you can reach out to me as well.
Tamaya, thank you so much. I've gotten to hear Tamaya speak in person several times, and I always learn a lot, and I'm always even more inspired to keep doing this work. So thank you so much for joining us. Next, I'm going to hand it off to my dear friend, Jerome Legions. Jerome is on the UpVote Virginia board because I'm very lucky. And he also is the current chair of the Richmond City Democratic Committee and the former president of the Richmond Crusade for Voters, and like a bunch of other positions. He is the unofficial mayor of Richmond. So we are very, very lucky to have him taking his time today. And Jerome, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, and it's nice to see everyone. And I like the idea that there's so many people on this call regarding the subject of ranked choice voting. I think what's happening as far as ranked choice voting is concerned, it's a lot of smoke that's actually gaining fire, if that makes any sense whatsoever. You know, being the chair of Richmond City Democratic Committee, the interesting thing for us is that there are more people that's pro ranked choice voting than there are people inside of the committee that's anti-ranked choice voting. So we think we're going to make something happen here. I think the problem that we're having, it's not so much I know the problem that we're having is that we're trying to convince some of our current elected officials that they're not losing out. What's happening is it will give them an opportunity to talk more of their constituency. Also, too, excuse me, also, too, it will give them an opportunity to recognize that they're actually truly representing their district instead of representing a portion of their district. So we're seeing some great momentum as far as ranked choice voting is concerned. What we had to do as far as Richmond Crusade for Voters is that we had to explain that process over and over again. Just a little background. The Richmond Crusade for Voters is probably the oldest Black voting organization in the city of Richmond. And so we had folks that kind of said that we do not want this. We don't understand this. And the reason, well, they understood it, but what their fear was that it would dilute the opportunities to get Black folks elected to have voices heard. And so we did something really, really, really interesting and something really easy. We had what's your favorite candy bar? And so we had a series of candy bars in the building, and we asked people to rank their candy bars for the most part. And when they did that, and the candy bars that won, they kind of said, "Oh, that's ranked choice voting? Yeah, pretty much." And so we sort of, as the Richmond Crusade for Voters, we appreciate the opportunity to educate folks for the most part, but then also too, now I'm not with the Richmond Crusade for Voters any longer, but with that being said, there's a much better understanding when anyone from the Richmond Crusade for Voters and the Richmond City Democratic Committee, and I'm going to also dare to say the metro area young Democrats have to talk about ranked choice voting. They can tell you why it's important, why it's necessary, and why it's needed. Uh, what happens is that we recognize that it gives a strong representation of people that are interested in running for office. When I say strong representation, that means that, and we all know this, I mean, everybody that's on this call understands that it's not about just talking to a base that you've created, it's about talking to a larger population in the district that you want to represent. And so you want to hear, so it has caused people to kind of start thinking about what is it that I need to do if ranked choice voting comes to pass? And I think it's going to come to pass. We kind of been championing this for quite some time in Richmond, and I think we're doing really well. So I have to run, but I'm doing a class, and I got a few moments. So if there's any questions for me as to how we made this happen with the African American community in the city of Richmond and the younger community in the city of Richmond, I'll be more than glad to answer those questions. Or Liz has my email. She can send you my email, and I'll be more than glad to respond to any of the questions that you may have as far as how do we make ranked choice voting how we move ranked choice voting along. I know for the Richmond City Democratic Committee, we are actually going to write a resolution for the city of Richmond to kind of say we would like to see more of this taking place. I know folks kind of say, well, the registrar can't handle it, and the registrar said we can handle it. It's a matter of doing it. So we kind of take that off the table too to say that ranked choice voting is going to become expensive, it's going to become cumbersome, all that's coming off the table. So there'll really be no excuses as far as ranked choice voting is concerned, as far as I'm concerned, and as far as the organizations that I'm involved in moving it forward. So I know I'm going to run, but any questions for me?
I will pass them along. Jerome, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. It is always a pleasure to have you. And I'm so grateful. Thanks so much. I will pass along
Thank you. I
anybody
appreciate it.
happy to pass along any questions or connections needed to Jerome if folks want to put them in the chat. Thanks, Jerome.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, I am now going to pass the torch to Councilwoman Katherine Jordan. She represents Richmond City from the second district and was the city council member, the first in the state to bring forth an ordinance to try to get a locality to adopt ranked choice voting. And I'm really, really grateful for your time today, Councilwoman. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Liz. Tamaya, it was great to hear your presentation. And just in a few minutes, my charge was to talk about why it would be good in Richmond and why I championed it. And just to not bury the lead, I want to champion it again. And I 100% agree with Jerome, who I worked with closely on our first attempt at this 5 years ago. People want it. People are excited for it. And now is the time to really try and activate that for us, because we're a year into our 4-year terms. It would give our registrar and our voters time to be educated, to get communication out to the public. And for me, the reason I believe in it is primarily for sort of the toxic election atmosphere. As Tamaya noted, we have pretty good parity when it comes to representation of Black women on Richmond City Council. In fact, I think we would grade great on that. What we don't have is good parity anymore on gender, but for the opposite reason. 8 out of 9 of our members are women. So I think that's exciting. And but it's a relatively recent development is the reality. And even with that, those gains, we're still seeing when we have multiple people running, just, the increase in sort of like this toxic negative atmosphere. And then also what you have when you have multiple people and you have someone at city council or the mayor's office who has not reached that 50%, folks really do not feel engaged. They don't feel like they're represented, especially I would say at the mayoral level for us. And I was discouraged that the mayor's office is not included in this most recent bill at the General Assembly. I don't know if there's any chance to resurrect that before session closes, but in Richmond, for those who aren't aware, you have to, I think it's been noted, you have to win 5 out of the 9 precincts. And so what will happen is people just focus on the 5 that they think they can win, or 4, hoping to force a runoff. And so you have whole districts where there may not be any real mobilization for that election. And, come the day after election day, when a winner has been determined, for us, we've actually never had to go to a runoff. You have people who feel ignored and are not going to feel bought into that administration. So I was really excited about this opportunity, one, to lower the temperature at these elections, particularly now things are really overly heated. And then 2, make people feel like their voice matters. We have a lot of folks who feel like there's no reason to vote. We want them to feel engaged in part of local government. So I tell you what, the time goes by really quickly when you have multiple speakers. I believe I was meant to wrap up at 4:48. I'll pause, see if there are any questions, but I will put my newsletter sign up in the chat. Anyone who's local and wants to follow this, renewed effort here in Richmond, and this is the first time I've mentioned that I am bringing this back again. So you guys are hearing it for the first time, but please sign up for that newsletter. That's probably where I'll be sharing updates on the work to try and get this going again in Richmond. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time and your leadership on this. It is much, much harder to get this kind of work done without a champion on the governing body, and we're so grateful to have you be ours. Thanks. I'm going to hand the rest of the time over without any more delay to Dr. Matthew Slaats, who is, you have so many titles. I don't want to get the title wrong because it's really cool. You are the Senior Civic Innovation Manager for the city and also the head of the Richmond People's Budget, the RVA People's Budget. And I think one of the hardest things in getting ranked choice voting information out is just that it seems like this standalone niche academic issue when really like socializing it and showing people that not only is it not hard, but also that can just bring about real results is so huge. So I would love for you to share with us the intersection between RCV and the people's budget, and the intersection between RCV and citizen engagement in general.
Yeah, no, thank you, Liz. And it's an honor to be on this panel with both friends. Jerome was also on the Participatory Budgeting Steering Commission from the beginning, and Councilwoman Jordan was a big advocate for the people's budget as we move forward with that for the first time in Virginia. So for me, I'm going to be talking just really quickly about engagement in Richmond in general, and various ways that things are happening and evolving. So I think we all are exhausted from our political environment at the moment, and people are really looking for new, meaningful ways to be involved in their communities and local government in different ways. There's this narrative of the decline of democracy, but I think what's really happening is there's like a reemergence of a bunch of new ideas that like rebuild that faith in government, rebuild the trust, and provide meaning. And so ranked choice voting is one great answer on the electoral side, but then you have processes like participatory budgeting, which gives residents a small stake in how their local budget, city budget is decided on. And it's not just about spending that money. It's really about educating residents about like how that budget process works. A lot of people just are totally divorced from that. So how do we bring them in, let them understand how that works, and then let them exercise their civic muscles, right? Like it's. I think a lot of this is like we've got to practice these things more and more, and if we don't, we lose that knowledge and that skill, that ability to have a conversation with a neighbor about in important ways, and think about budgets too as documents that are not just a bunch of numbers, but they're an expression of our hopes and dreams. And then in Richmond, we're also seeing things like assemblies develop, both citizen and popular assemblies, which are citizen assemblies as a way for residents to play a role in helping guide policy development and providing information to our elected officials and our mayors, while like popular assemblies are just a rethinking of our kind of traditional civic association models. And these are really great, but I think what they're really doing is kind of building a new civic culture for Virginia, right? Just the mix of all those things. And when they work in relationship, they are about moving beyond polarization, the exhaustion that we are feeling, and really moving towards problem solving and deepening feelings of ownership. And one of the great ways that happened was this collaboration between the Richmond People's Budget and UpVote in 2025, when we used ranked choice voting as a part of our participatory budgeting process. So the way participatory budgeting works, it starts off by collecting ideas from residents. So we go out and ask people how they make their neighborhood better. And we gathered all those ideas. We collected 2,000 of those in our first cycle in Richmond. And then we bring residents together. They take those ideas, process them, think about the impact of them, analyze them, do a lot of research, and then come up with these like tangible projects. Then those eventually go on a ballot. And we had over 5,000 people vote in the first cycle of the Richmond People's Budget, which was a really great response. And then things go off and get funded after those choices are made. So what was great about that process is that we had Councilwoman Jordan be a part of the early defining of the ordinance for that, and there was a mandate for ranked choice voting in how we spent $3 million of the budget. So each council district had 10 to 15 projects each. And we took these ballots out to those communities. Voters ranked their top 3 choices. We then tabulated them and we came out with a result. And I'll say in this first year where we were very much building the plane and flying it at the same time, I personally was really nervous about ranked choice voting. For a lot of those reasons that we all hear, right? It's complicated. It's hard to do. More for me was about having a very small staff of people that had to count 5,000 ballots and then tabulate them all. But again, luckily we had great partners with UpVote and friends at PB Stanford to help us. So yeah, while like both ranked choice voting and participatory are like new kind of abstract ideas, we love it when people get to kind of feel and touch and see these innovations, right? Making them tangible in their lives. And this collaboration allowed the public to do that with ranked choice voting. And the great feedback that we got was that everyone was like, this is really easy. And we're used to prioritizing decisions. I mean, like the candy, this note that Jerome mentioned earlier is a great example. It wasn't hard, right? This isn't not that difficult. We've got the skills and the knowledge to do this. While we tend to kind of underestimate the thoughtfulness, commitment, and the ability of the public to do this work, when done with intention and setting expectations and clear communications, it can really be transformative for people and how they feel about this relationship they have with local government. And this is really what we're trying to make happen. And this is a really great case study for how that can happen in the future. And that is it for me. I'll turn it back to you, Liz.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you again to our panelists for all of your insight and your time and your enthusiasm and expertise. Thank you to the attendees who are spending your Sunday afternoon with us. Thank you to the forum for such an exciting event last night and for looping us in and elevating the work that we are doing. The hardest part of this, and I think that everyone in this kind of reform space, the hardest part is really getting focus on issues like this, getting oxygen on issues like this, because it feels like everything is on fire. All of us, again, all of us probably watch a lot of news, read a lot of news, and it feels like a lot of parts of our democracy are engulfed in flames. And I think our job is to not only put reforms in place to keep us safe while we're still in the burning house, but also to ensure that once we've put out those flames, our house is built of less flammable material, that we are safe from future fires. And I know that that metaphor got a little extended, but it is, I can't overstate the importance of strengthening our democracy and not taking it for granted. I hope that you will look through the links in the chat. I will also send them out. There are so many ways to get involved. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you to not only consider giving us your time and networks, but also if you would like to support our work. We are a 501c3 and a 501c4. So we are a nonprofit all the way down the line. And again, this is sometimes hard work to get attention on. And we would really, really value any investment of your time or resources or treasures that you feel you'd like to give us. So we are, look at us 1 minute early. I think this is a first probably for any nonprofit webinar ever. But I, again, am so grateful for all of your time today and for everyone for being here. My information is very easy to find on the website, but I will also put it in the chat one more time. Please feel free to reach out to us if you have questions, if you have suggestions, if you have a book club you'd like us to come speak to. Truly, the way that this work happens is just getting the word out one group at a time. So thank you all so very much and enjoy the rest of your evening. Oh, good. Beth's fired up. I'm so excited. I hope the rest of you are just as excited as we are. Thanks so much.